For some, this is a time of prayer. For others, it's a time of quiet contemplation. Whichever this time is for you, may we turn our thoughts together and give our respect to our comrades as we remember and honor them. La source de toute la vie et de tout amour, nous nous tenons aujourd'hui devant toi dans la tranquillité et la paix de cette place magnifique, mais pleurons avec une odeur dans le cœur. Celui suscite et nous tant d'émotions, le respect, l'admiration, la fierté, et la tristesse. Today we turn to you with heavy hearts for the lives lost 69 years ago, but yet with thankful hearts for the bravery shown and the loyalty demonstrated. We think in particular today of the 9-person crew of 405 Squadron Lancaster KB914. We thank you for the faithful service of the members of this flight and to have the opportunity to be present here to honor them together through this memorial. You were there with them on that day, just as you are here with us today. You saw their courage, felt their fear, and witnessed their bravery. And today you feel our pride as we remember their perseverance and devotion to duty. You hear our questions as we wonder at the futility of such loss of life, and you weep with us as we weep for them. Merci pour l'amour qu'ils avaient pour leur pays, leurs camarades et pour nous tous. Nous prions que vous nous inspiriez ces mêmes esprits de dévouement. We pray that you would inspire us with that same spirit of devotion to our country, our comrades, and our fellow citizens. Strengthen all of us as we continue to serve our beloved country by following the example of those who served before us in honor, loyalty, and excellence. May their example spur us on in our day to use our lives, talents, and resources for the good of our nation and the benefit of humanity. In your name.
You may be seated. I'll now ask Colonel Cook to address the crowd.
G'day folks, I want to thank everybody for coming here today as we commemorate the loss of KB914 in Labrador. When we think of air operations, we often think of the people that might die in war, and we sometimes forget that what we do every day is a risky business. These brave souls were not at war at the time that this aircraft was lost, but they were nonetheless flying in extremely difficult conditions in Labrador. Conditions which I know many folks standing in this audience or have seated in this crowd will have flown in themselves. I can know of times myself when I've flown in conditions where I could barely see the wingtip of the aircraft as we were descending towards water, the whole time hoping and taking deep breaths as we went down that the sea state 7 that was forecast was in fact a sea state 7 and there wasn't going to be a wave coming up into the clouds that we hadn't forecast. And so we must remind ourselves that while we stand right now looking at our world and seeing what is the ravages of war that continue to go on and conflict, that it is not only in those situations where we as airmen and airwomen, aviators, put ourselves at risk. We are putting ourselves at risk every day in the training that we do, in the operations that we fly, and we do that because we have a strong, heartfelt commitment to this country and everything that it stands for. Because we are committing ourselves to be ready for this nation. These souls were ready for their nation on that day. They were doing the task that was given to them. They came back in terrifically terrible conditions and were unable to land, went away and came back, and then unfortunately were lost, still trying to achieve the mission that their country had set out for them. They range in age from 21 to 34 years old, which makes me very much feel like a dinosaur, and I'm not. But these are brave souls that were doing this job, the same demographic that we have today doing this job. So I take great heart that we are taking the time in moments like this to look back at where we have come from and to commemorate the souls that have gone before us as we stay focused on the task that is in fact right ahead of us. In 1953, they were just post-World War II, but in the midst of a war, the Korean War. We find ourselves post-Cold War, but watching and aiding another country at war. And we don't know if that will change. And so we can see the lives that they were living at the time and the work that they were doing, and we can see how, by looking back at that history, how that is a mirror on what we have today and the challenges that are ahead of us. And so as we take our solemn look at this great monument that we've erected here to memorialize these folks, I hope that when people look at it, they think to themselves, will I live up to what they were doing? Will I aspire to be as dedicated to the job as they were? And I hope we can all answer yes, that we will honor their memory by being as dedicated to our job as they were dedicated to theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Colonel Cook, Major General Retired Patrick, Lieutenant Colonel Goldie, ladies and gentlemen, greetings from the 405 Squadron Association. In 2019, the 405 Squadron Association, in concert with 405 Maritime Reconnaissance Squadron and the Greenwood Military Aviation Museum, determined that a memorial was required to be placed in this area for the crew of KB914, and thus the project was started. The priority was to try and contact family members, and for that long a year, from 1953, it was a daunting task. However, over the 2 years, we have been able to contact 7 of the 9 families, which is probably unheard of. And today we have family members, noseworthy families from Polo. Did I say it right, Polo? I did? Thank you very kindly. And do you have anyone from the Tate family here? Yes, we do. Okay. From Flying Officer Tate. The Foles came from, were originally from Newfoundland, but the Noseworthy family is from Moncton, and the Tate family is from Grand Manan. Now, to hold a ceremony like this requires an awful lot of work by many people, and I would like to offer my gratitude to all those individuals and groups that actually supported this effort. I would now like to introduce Lieutenant Colonel Tom Goldie, the current commanding officer of 405 Squadron.
Thank you, Bert. General Patrick, Wing Commander, distinguished guests, Pathfinders, past and present, family, friends, and all those in attendance. Thank you for being here as we honor the memories of the crew of Lancaster KB914. A special thank you also to Bert, of course, and the 405 Squadron Association for initiating this project and persevering through COVID to bring us to the point where we're here to make this dedication today. And I'm also very pleased and honored to be part of it. As I researched the unit historical narrative and the circumstances surrounding KB914 mission, I learned a story of a crew not unlike those that we have at 405 Squadron today. Young, brave, keen, and ready. Dispatched to Keflavik, Iceland to participate in an anti-submarine warfare exercise, and then retasked to return, as Colonel Cook said, across the North Atlantic to aid in a domestic search and rescue. Now, precisely what happened in the last 60 minutes of the flight could never be determined with certainty by the investigators, but the probable scenario was both chilling and tragic. Mechanical issues, complicated by poor weather, and yet to be discovered, shortcomings in the aircraft operating instructions led to a catastrophic loss of control. In the words of Hugh Halliday, an author and contributor with the Canadian Aviation Historical Society regarding the investigation's findings, the only comfort that anyone would ever be able to take from the crash was that when the end came, it was mercifully swift. The airmen of KB914 made the ultimate sacrifice, together, alongside each other, and now immortalized in history here, our brothers in arms, the crew of KB914, certainly not forgotten. Now, many of us know here that the profession of arms requires duty, honor, and courage. KB914 was fulfilling its duty, searching for a missing aircraft in the vicinity of Goose Bay, Labrador, in February 1953, an undertaking in service of others before self. Nothing could be more honorable. Courage in spades, a brave crew accepting a difficult task, pushing up against challenging conditions, accepting the call. Flying Officer Stephen James Decker, Navigator, age 24, a native of Cook's Harbour, Newfoundland. Flying Officer Bernard Delbert Forbes, Radio Officer, age 23, born in North Bay, Ontario. Flying Officer Francis Stewart Folo, Radio Officer, age 24, born in St. John's, Newfoundland. Corporal Joseph Donnet Gallant, Flight Engineer, age 34, a native of Urbanville, Prince Edward Island, and a veteran of the Second World War. Corporal Roger David Joseph Lalonde, Flight Engineer, aged 30, born in Cobalt, Ontario, also a veteran of the wartime. Flying Officer Charles Bruce Scott, co-pilot, aged 27, born in St. John, New Brunswick. Flying Officer Turlin Maybury Tate, Radio Officer, aged 22, born in Grand Manan, New Brunswick. Flying Officer Thomas Claude Wager, DFC, aged 32, born in Parnham, Ontario, awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross in World War II. Flying Officer Douglas David Richard Wood, Navigator, aged 21, born in Peterborough, Ontario. Military aviation is by its nature is inherently dangerous. We know that. With many of our checklists and procedures written in their blood by the lessons learned from others. It's incalculable how many lives may have been saved over the years by the lessons offered by the crew of KB914, who still continued to serve in their passing. The history and heritage of the RCAF, its pride of place in the hearts of its current and former members, and the esteem with which it's held by onlookers and affiliates, exists in large measure as a direct result of the glorious sacrifices paid by its members. We're thankful. To the extended family and friends of KB914 crew in attendance today, I want to pass along my sincere condolences for the untimely passing of your loved ones back on that faithful day in 1953. The loss of that crew will be forever a loss to us all. I believe that a life well served with duty and honor and courage is to be celebrated, not mourned. And I further believe that the crew of KB914 are sitting pride of place with the most worthy back in the big blue where all good airmen go to rest. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Deucimus.
I would now like to introduce Major General Retired Ian Patrick, who is going to talk to us about why we remember.
Good to see the Wing Commander and his Chief again. It's only a few days, it seems, and the Padre. And here we are, celebrating and remembering once again. As a volunteer at the Greenwood Military Aviation Museum, our motto is preserve the past for the future. And a variety of reasons you could say that we do that kind of thing. And part of it has to do with if you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat the failures in the future. We look forward to filling in the blanks constantly because we can never put our fingers on everything that happened that is a critical part of what we are all about today, all of us standing here. At first I thought Bert asked me to come along and speak because I was so good looking, but then after I listened to some of the talk here, being a Newfoundlander, a couple of my brethren are here, and when they started saying things about people who were only in their 20s, and saying, gee whiz, it would be strange if we could find people that were actually related to these people. But I'd like to tell you that I joined the Air Force 1 year after this, and I started pilot training 2 years after this accident occurred. And I can tell you that the empathy I felt when I read the story of this activity was incredible. People tend to think, you know, today they don't look back very much. But the airplanes they fly today have so many safety features, so many capabilities, and when things go bad, they can pop up out of the clouds. Back when I flew, and these people too, we didn't fly hardly ever above 10,000 feet, which meant that we were always in the weather. And anybody who's lived on the East Coast knows, particularly in the winter time, the weather is dreadful below 10,000 feet. The other thing was most of the aircraft we flew were relics from World War II. They were never designed for long-range flying in all kinds of different weather. They usually cancel out when the weather wasn't good. But in missions that we fly, weather isn't a factor. We go anyway. And one of the things too was back then that navigation aids and aids to landing were few and not very good. The weather was really bad, you were in trouble. And they invented a magnificent thing called ground control approach, where a man looking at a scope could talk you down to the ground. You didn't even need to see it. You might hit it pretty hard if you didn't see it, but at least you could get down. And wouldn't you know it, that fateful day, the ground control approach radar was down, and they had to turn back. Now, the little airplane that they were looking for, we're restoring one in the museum here. And of course, we have a Lancaster here. And I can tell you, having flown several thousand hours in that little airplane, you did not want to fly in icing. If you flew in light rime icing, you could easily activate what we call the boots out in the wing, which would wiggle around and flick it off. But if you were in clear ice, you were in serious trouble. And when we heard that these aircraft were covered in ice, we knew darn well that that was clear ice. And clear ice is so bad that you're not legally allowed to file a flight plan into it, no matter who you are and what kind of equipment you have if you're going to be in it any extended period of time. And the trouble with it is too, it forms over the wing, changes the profile, reduces your airspeed. The little expediter that they were looking for example, when I flew at night and knew I was picking up icing, I didn't have to look out the window because my airspeed went from 110 knots to 90 knots in about 15 minutes. And that's how badly it can, and quickly, it can affect an airplane. It's tragic that these things happen. It's important that we remember them. We learn from the mistakes we've had. That area was one with few airports, few weather forecasting stations, and you were always guessing as to was it accurate or was it not. And a lot of those blanks have now been filled in along with the capacities of our airplanes to fly in almost any weather at any time. So the lessons we've learned from them is we need to remember them because they were critical, and people need to know today how awful it was back there, even on a small mission, and how wonderful it is today if you remember that and use your advantages that you've been given today. And for the people who went by, we never want to forget them. Because of them, we learned an awful lot. The job got done, and we are much better for it. and we can remember them forever for what they have contributed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Now, if I could ask everyone to stand for the last post, please. We will now observe a minute of silence. I will now call on the Padre to present the benediction.
As we close here your benediction, let us be thankful for their loyalty, their duty, their honor, and their service of excellence. May their example encourage us to live likewise.
Please stay standing for the departure of Colonel Cook.
Color party, general salute, breeze ahead, arm. Color party, shoulder, arm.
Okay, that concludes the service today, and we invite everyone inside the VPI building here for a reception.